Hey everybody, Cindy Daychuk with Queen Bee Creations. Today's craft is really giving you a way of being able to switch up some of your existing home decor. So for instance, I have these old, really tired, dated looking wooden candlesticks. Nobody's going to want to have these around, in which case I'm snapping them up, but you may have something like this. I'm using wood deliberately for this element, but you could use metal, you could use ceramic, you could use glass candlesticks for exactly the same technique. But what I'm looking at doing is making them a little bit more modern, and we're gonna go rust. So it kind of seems weird. I'm talking about making them look more modern by rusting them out, which makes them look old. But it's a more updated look. It's going to fit in with boho, it's going to fit in with farmhouse, and it's going to fit in really nicely with industrial contemporary looks as well. So to start with, I just want to get some paint onto this. And I'm going to use a base of turquoises, just because I like the contrast of the turquoise with the rust. But I've done rust with on black finishes. I have an awesome buffet that I had done, and I showed you some of the techniques. I think that video is probably on here somewhere, so you could check that out if you're looking for this finish on a piece of furniture. But I wanted to show you that can be used really well with smaller decor items. You could do the same technique on maybe a pot or a planter, on a shelf maybe as well. So to start, our first step though is just getting some paint on here. And I'm using a combination of DIY clay-based paint, so the paint that I sell here at the store, queenbeecreationshome.com. I'm using Old 57, which is kind of like a light turquoisey color, and I'm using Mermaid Tail, which is more of a dark. And first step, really pretty basic, pretty easy, is we're just going to paint our item. Now if you're painting on glass or metal, then you want to make sure that your paint is one that's going to adhere fairly well to that. DIY, the clay-based paint, sticks to just about anything, which is one of the reasons that I love it in particular, because I have tons of flexibility. I don't have to be switching paints. I don't have to purchase a lot of other product. And these smaller crafts with some of your paint is perhaps a good way of maybe switching up some of your decor to match. Maybe a dresser that you have just completed uses up some of your little pieces of paint, because it's really not going to take a lot of paint. You can see that I've got two colors here. I don't have a lot of either one of them kind of spritzed out on my board, on my little paper plate, sorry. But it's going to be more than enough paint to be able to paint both of these candlesticks, no problem. And because I'm looking at doing the rust finish over top of this, I'm likely not going to need two coats. You may, depending upon whatever surface you're on, if you're on a slicker surface like glass, you're probably going to want to put a thin coat on first, which creates a little bit of a tack for a thicker second coat to go on. Hey there. Okay, we have got our candlesticks painted in our two tones of turquoise. I get they are not attractive and that they look very splotchy, but that's okay because we're going to be covering most of it up. And I just wanted to have some paint color on there that would be peeking through so that our finish wouldn't be total rust, but it gives some additional contrast and adds just a little bit of something to it. Now I am actually stirring up our iron paint. So this is an oxidizing iron paint. This particular brand that I'm using and that I've had great success with is by Modern Masters. And I'll put the link down below where you can pick it up if you don't have a paint store near you that carries it. Some of the hardware stores are starting to. Sometimes they just sell them in little kits though. So, which is perfect if you just have a small project and you want to give it a try. It's not the most inexpensive paint. But again, it's magic paint. So, you know, you're paying for the effect that you can get and the fact that it's got all those small little iron filings in there. So I like to stir it up because I find that the iron filings have a tendency to fall to the bottom. Now, I will say this, because these are wood, I am not concerned about using my iron oxide paints, my iron paint, directly onto them. If they were metal, then I would need to put a primer down first. And again, Modern Masters makes a primer that protects your surface. This is what you do if you were doing this to metal. So if your candlesticks are metal or you're doing this on a metal table, you need to put the primer down first, because when we add the activator, it's going to start rusting the metal filings in this paint. If you have put the paint directly onto a metal table without the primer to act as a barrier, it will start to rust your actual table. Now, if it was a candlestick and you don't care, you can skip the primer step because, gee, it's really solid, and by the time that it really rusts this out, it's going to be decades from now, and I'm perfectly happy with that. Then cool, just do the paint. But if you're doing it on wood, on glass, on ceramic, you can skip the primer step, which again saves a cost. And basically, you're going to be putting the black paint anywhere and everywhere that you would like to see rust showing through. I want these mostly rust, so I'm going to be putting this paint just about everywhere. And generally speaking, plan on doing 2 coats. It goes on kind of thin and a little bit streaky. The second coat puts it on more. But know this, where you have more of it, you'll get more of a rust finish. Where you have less, you'll get less of a rust finish. So you might not want it to be all rust all over. You might want to have it coming out a little bit lighter. If once you add the activator, and we're going to be adding it and letting it sit overnight, if you don't have as much rust as you would like, add more paint. Use the activator again, leave it. So you get to play with this in stages if you find that you need to, that you want to. So here there's really no rhyme or reason to my painting. I'm just kind of dabbing it on mostly all over. I mostly want a black candlestick. I'm going to try and leave a bunch of splotches to kind of show through, but again, I may sand back a little bit in some spots, so get some of that blue showing through if I find that I don't have enough or it's not in the spots that I'd like. Then I can do some sanding as well. So all that you're doing with this stage is you are painting it 2 times for better coverage. And so paint it the first time, let it dry, put the second coat of paint over top of all the places that you painted it, let it dry, and then we come back again. We are at the stage with our candlesticks that we have our paint base on. We've got our 2 coats of our metal iron oxidizing paint. Okay, again, I'm using Modern Masters. There's some other brands that you could use. And now, because I'm at the workshop and I'm going to be heading home soon, I want to get these activating overnight. I want to be able to get my rust activator onto them so that they can work at it, bring out the rust overnight. It's like a great piece of excitement, right? Coming in the next day, taking a look at it the next morning after it sat all night to be able to see all the rust come out. So that's kind of the fun part of it. Okay, you might notice that I've switched bottles. Plugged, not able to spray. You could dab this onto sponges and things to be able to sponge it on as well, giving a different texture. So that would give a slightly different look. I just want to kind of spritz it all over though. And so I wanted to use a spray. So I had to move it into a different bottle. That's it. That's as easy as it gets. Not bad, right? So I'm just spritzing this all over. I don't mind if I overspray in some areas and it drips, because sometimes that creates some really cool rust patterns. So it's the same thing down here. I don't mind if it kind of flows down and pools down here, because I might get a little bit more rust activated there. And as I said, you know, if you dab it on or you have it run down, you're going to get slightly different looks and different textures as it comes out. But that's it. That's all that I'm doing. I've got it sprayed, and I'm going to bump up the overspray, but I'm going to set it off to the side, and I'm going to take a look at it tomorrow. I'm just going to let it sit overnight and see what rust comes out. And we'll take a look at it together, and I'll see what I want and need to do with it beyond that. So I might want to add a little bit more of the oxidizing paint. I might want to add a little bit more of the rust in some areas, so I may be dabbing because I don't have enough rust. But we'll play with it from there. We're just going to let it sit, take a look at it, and decide together. Okay, our candlesticks have had a chance to dry overnight, and they look fabulously rusted. Fabulous rust streaks and drips. Love it. Now, the one thing that I do want to do is to reveal just a little bit more of our turquoise. You can see in some spots where it's showing through, and the contrast is just beautiful. So I am going to want to lightly sand in some spots, take some of the rust off, reveal some of that blue. And I'm just using a 320 grit sandpaper, so I'm just going very light on this. But I just want to reveal a little bit more of that blue. I'm not sanding everywhere. I don't want to take all of the rust off. The rough texture is part of what you get with the rust, so we're not looking for a perfectly sanded, smooth finish. But I am just looking at trying to reveal in some strategic spots, probably where the rust isn't as heavy. I want that lovely orange kind of rusted look. So where it's a little bit more black, or where I've already got a little bit of the blue peeking through, I'll just sand lightly to reveal a little bit more of that. So that's all that has to be done with that. You could leave it. I tend to seal this. It just prevents it from continuing to rust, and for, you know, other things like water or whatever from impacting it. So what I will do is sand all of this, and then I will spray Varathane it. So this is just a satin. I like it not to be shiny because that detracts from the rusted look. So I want it to be a little bit flat in terms of look, but it just kind of seals this in, prevents the rust from doing anything more, and it prevents other things from damaging my candlesticks. So I'm going to sand, dust off the excess dust and paint that I've done, and then I'm going to seal, and then our candlesticks are finished.